Good morning, Patriot pals. Thank you for joining me. Have a good day and God bless you. Let's get into the news. And big news coming down to Brazil. As you guys know, we've been following this story now for the last couple of weeks, where we've been seeing how the military has been working to ensure they actually protect democracy in the country, Brazil, where the communists are looking to take over, and there's shady dealings with the election that took place in that country. And again, there is a mechanism within the Brazilian constitution, which authorizes the military to protect the country against an election that was done improperly. And so what we see here is the military actually stepping up to take extraordinary steps to ensure it is protecting democracy. And we will see what happens. The Supreme Court of Brazil is panicking, where they're looking to move up the certification of this election from December 19 to December 12, because they know what is about to take place. And there should be some major arrests that also would follow this because of the willingness of the Supreme Court in Brazil, the communist sympathizers on that court who are looking to ensure that they change that country forever, and will never be the same after a takeover the communists. So let's get into this. We've been following for the Gateway Pundit because they actually have a journalist that is there in Brazil right now. Giving updates. Brazil military takes out Red Command cartel leaders, prepares to take over. Gateway Pundit and that Thai man on War Room were the first worldwide to report that Brazilian military is mobilizing under its constitutional authority to protect democracy. Sources on the ground now confirmed that the army is mobilizing and has eliminated key leaders of the communist-aligned drug cartels in Rio. In an unusual step for the military, the army has invaded Fabulous of Rio de Janeiro and killed top leaders of the Command Vermelho Red Command drug cartel, which supports the communist criminal Luis Lula. Da Silva. Observers take this to indicate the beginning of a federal military intervention. The drug gangs were the only ones to celebrate the alleged election victory by criminal Lula in October 30, firing automatic weapons into the air, and fatherless President Bolsonaro cracked down hard on the Brazilian drug gangs, that head of the drug trafficking of Mauro do Jurimento, and others identified as Rodrigo Bolsonaro. Yeah, all those names, respectively, were taken out during the military police operation on Thursday. 3 other suspects died in the action and one who was injured is imprisoned in custody in the hospital. Odia reports. The drug cartels are the armed wing of the communist command Comando Vala. Homo controls parts of Rio de Janeiro and was formed back in 1979 as an alliance between cartels and communists. If they are eliminated, the risk of civil war will be significantly reduced. That's a good thing. Hundreds of thousands of Brazilians were protesting again on the weekend, standing outside army bases and pleading for the military to save their country from the communist cartels. The corrupt Superior Electric Court moved up to date to certify this elections from December 19 to 2 p.m. on Monday, December 12. Observers believed this is a pro-communist core wants to move quickly to install their candidate Lula. They'll still be possibly even moving up certification of that election this week. They acknowledge duration is scheduled for January 1, 2023. This puts pressure on the military high command to act before it's too late. Speaking to Steve Bannon, Brazilian observer Matt Tom pointed out that the proposal-era military would be in danger of being purged if the corrupt criminal Lula takes over. It's off to the gulags. Then he noted the military deputy prosecutor general sent a letter to the military prosecution general, noting that failure to comply with the steps requested by the military defense when inspecting the electronic voting machines. The letter also complained of possible interference of foreign companies in the electoral process, which could not be verified since the military aforementioned team does not have broad access to information related to the electoral process. Unlike the big tech companies, which maintaining partnership with the electoral court. There should be an investigation to possible crime against the country's external security regarding a possible cyber attack, the letter states. And don't forget, over the weekend, we also learned that Elon Musk mentioned that Twitter interfered in the Brazil's election as well. Here's all the documents that were up here. You can check them out on link. The official declaration of 142, which allows military to intervene in the case of conflict between branches of government. It's expected this week. Soldiers were seen joining the protesters and instructing them to remain calm. When action comes, drivers cheered. Military convoys deployed to strategic locations throughout the country. Troops have been deployed to the Venezuela border to guard against communist invasion. Speaking before the Brazilian Senate Retire regional election, Man Magistrates Sebastião Colo were again call for the arrest of the corrupt Chief Justice Alexander de Moraes, who has been carrying water for the communist takeover. So we're going to see what actually takes place here in Brazil in the next few days, where the military is now acting on behalf of the people of Brazil to restore its country to a democracy versus this communist takeover, which they engineered to ensure that they would have control. So we'll continue to keep a close eye on what's taking place in Brazil. And then some significant news. Back in the 1960s, there was a group of people who are called the neoconservatives. This is not like how he talked about a neoconservatives today meeting people who are just sort of hawkish on foreign policy and pretty vague about the terminology. There are a group of people who decided that they were conservative, mainly because they were liberals who had been mugged by reality that didn't shift their social policy. What they really realized is that their policies with regard to crime and foreign policy had been a gigantic fail. Well, we are about to see a wave of people who are returning to reality because it turns out that the left has been mugged by reality and continues to be mugged by reality. And we're seeing it all over the spectrum. We are seeing it in the media. We are seeing it in politics. We are seeing it with regard to places like Disney. So yesterday, Chris Ruffo, who's done just yeoman's work in exposing the political indoctrination that has now become part. Ruffo released a tape that he had obtained of an all-hands Disney meeting reintroducing old and now new CEO, Bob Iger. Now, Iger is very much the left, so much so that there was talk a few years ago about the possibility that Bob Iger might actually throw his hat into the ring for the Democratic presidential nomination. There's only one problem for Bob Iger and his wild left perspectives on life. And that is that in taking over Disney again, the stock price of Disney has dumped completely. So Disney stock was about $183.47 September 17, 2021. Today, it is at $94.69. So it has been sliced in about half over the course of the last year and a half or so. Not even year, about a year is really going to start at the dump. And one of the reasons for this is because Disney decided to go woke. So part of this has to do with the dynamics of streaming and the fact that as the economy starts to slow down, and people spend less money on entertainment, and people go back to work, that they're picking up less streaming services, sure. But that does not explain why Disney has disproportionately been slapped directly across the chops by the American public. The reason for that is because Disney has made clear that its priorities are not your priorities. Now, there is no bigger old Disney fan than I am an enormous old Disney fan. We owned all the tapes growing up, we still listen in my house. I shared a room with 3 of my siblings and my parents to put us to sleep with put on like a small cassette tape of the music from Beauty and Beast like every single night. The goal was to fall asleep before you hit the gas. Don song where he sings about killing the bass. Right? That was the goal. But we were huge Disney fans now meant that the biggest treat in the world when I was a kid was Mom and Dad take us out of school. And they take us to Disney, and that was like the best thing. And then when I became an adult and I had kids of my own, we became Disney Annual Pass members over in California. And then when we moved to Florida, one of the big draws was okay, we still have Disneyland, 2.5 hours away, which is awesome. That's just fantastic. And, again, I love all the old Disney products. I love the music. I love the movies, like this is one of the great American companies of all time, Disney. But it became clear over the past few years that they were now attempting to inject woke politics into what they were doing, particularly with regard to LGBT issues. And just a few months ago, Chris Ruffo revealed an all-hands Disney meeting in which people were openly bragging about injecting a quote-unquote, not at all secret gay agenda into Disney content. And that followed hard on Disney injecting itself directly into politics in Florida for no apparent reason. Florida passed a bill that was designed to prevent the sexual indoctrination of children under the age of 8. The media immediately labeled it the quote-unquote, "Don't say gay bill." But that, of course, is not what the bill says. The bill says you're not allowed to teach sexual orientation or gender identity to children under the age of 8. That is what the bill says. Was designed to prevent the indoctrination of kids into left-wing sexual values. Well, they are very, very small children. And Disney originally had nothing to say about this. And then the media did what they usually do. They started calling up Disney and trying to pressure Disney because they recognize that the top executives at Disney are Democrats. And they recognize that a huge base of the Disney creatives are Democrats. And they recognize that a huge percentage of Disney employees are either gay or straight, who are in favor of same-sex marriage, for example, and are all like sexually liberal that at least in their value system. And so they pushed Disney and Disney cave. And Disney decided that they were going to inject themselves directly into politics. And they came out swinging against Governor Ron DeSantis in the Republican legislature condemning the bill. And this prompted Governor DeSantis and the Republican legislature to say, well, hold up a second. You guys have special tax districts, you have special tax giveaways. You don't get to inject yourself into state politics, and basically try to stump against a political party in power for your own benefit, while at the same time expect us to continue granting you all sorts of large-s. That's not something that we are willing to do. Now you can make the argument that Governor DeSantis shouldn't have done that. You can make the argument that Republican legislators should have left it alone, that basically corporations get to say whatever they want without any sort of consequence. There's only one problem with that: if that rule only applies with regard to the right, then all the corporations will be left-wing, and that is precisely what's been occurring over the course of the last 10 or 15 years. If you had said 15 years ago, the biggest corporations in America would be reflecting the most why the old left social policies, everybody would laugh to you. These were capitalistic corporations. Why exactly would they betray their audience that way? Not only that, many of these corporations were headed up by people who were business savvy, and tended to be kind of conservative. So why would they do all of that? And the answer is that we had a wild asymmetry in terms of who was pressuring these major companies. Left was pressuring these companies. These companies were responding to the left, and the right was not answering in any way, shape, or form. Well, now the right has responded. And one thing that has happened is that not only have people like me and my family essentially disassociated from Disney, we are not annual pass holders at Disneyland anymore. We used to subscribe to Disney Plus. We do not subscribe to Disney Plus anymore. That is not where my kids watch their entertainment because, frankly, I don't trust Disney with my kids. Doesn't it used to be a place for innocence and childhood magic? And now Disney is a place where you go to see a lesbian couple and Lightyear, or you go to see a 16-year-old boy hit on another boy in the new Disney movie that came out last week? Well, unsurprisingly, there are a lot of parents who feel about this stuff the way that I feel about this stuff with my wife feels about this stuff. And so Disney has been taking it absolutely on the chin, which necessitated the Bob trade back, who'd been the sort of interim director. He'd been brought in to replace Iger. Overnighters stepped down. He has now been ousted, and Iger is back. So Iger did an all-hands meeting. And in this all-hands meeting, he said, it's time to quiet things down and move back to political neutrality. Now, do I trust that Disney is actually going to do this? Do I trust that Disney isn't going to continue to inject its politics into what it does? I don't think they're going to stop. I think they're going to continue to inject the politics. I think they're going to do it in slightly more subtle fashion. I think they're going to try to raise a few less hackles, because after all, doing it very publicly and very openly is what has brought about this state of affairs for Disney financially. But the fact that Disney is feeling the pressure is once again a sign that when the right rears its head, not even the right, when mainstream parents rear their heads and say we are not interested in products to try to sell this garbage, then corporations do listen, counter pressures work. In other words, here's Bob Iger admitting that it's time to go back to neutrality. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Of course, leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and of course possibly subscribe if you're up for it. I'm gonna get back to work. I want to thank you guys